Welcome to PCMC, Pop Culture Man Children. I'm Mike Bongiorno. I'm here again with good friend of the show, Mr. Peter J. Marsh.
Jay.
I just give everybody the J. I think J is
Oh,
the
okay.
perfect middle initial. Peter Marsh,
Yes.
you know Pete from his many, many YouTube ventures.
Yes. Comic books transformed and the Lasser cast.
And Comic Books Transformed is a good credit to have because today we are going to be talking about the DC Absolute Universe.
Yes.
Peter, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on as always.
So, let's talk about the Absolute Universe.
Sure.
So, and I have read, I should say what I've experienced from the Absolute Universe.
Sure.
I have read um the first arc of Absolute Batman. So I've read the first six issues of Absolute Batman.
Yeah.
I've read the first six issues of Absolute Superman and the first five issues of Absolute Wonder Woman. And I also
Mhm.
read the one-shot comic that I think it's called, what's it called? It's just called like All In Special or whatever. And it's about
Yeah.
how the Absolute Universe is created. Can you tell us a little bit of like what is the Absolute Universe?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Oh,
okay. So, one thing that kind of like shaped comics and made comics so big and created essentially the MCU too, like the blueprint for the MCU was the Ultimate Universe that Marvel created in the very late 90s, early 2000s,
uh-huh.
right? You had Ultimate X-Men. The first one was Ultimate Spider-Man. That was written by Brian Michael Bendis. Ultimate X-Men written by Mark Miller. And that was a huge hit because it was basically like starting from scratch. Like the heroes were younger, the stories hadn't been told yet, and you got to like start in a modern day,
Yes.
right? So like Peter Parker was like a web designer at the Daily Planet versus like
Yeah.
a photographer, right? And a lot of what the MCU is based on this Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
And so DC tried to do something like that themselves, but like years later in like 2011, they did the New 52,
Yeah.
where yeah, where like they basically like reset the universe and it was like you were starting from scratch again too, but that didn't work, you
Why
know?
didn't that work, by the way?
Great question. Because the Ultimate Universe was just this side thing. You could
Yeah.
still read regular Marvel comics, and the decades of stories still kept going, right?
Okay.
With the New 52, it was like they got rid of the regular DC universe, which
Okay.
has been going around since like the 1930s, and we're starting from scratch. So I think that people were upset to lose all of that history.
Okay.
And I didn't even answer your question as to what the absolute
Yeah, yeah,
universe is.
yeah.
No, but basically the absolute universe is the DC version of like the ultimate universe, where it's like starting from scratch, but it has its own very like specific parameters, which I think we're
Yes.
gonna go into, you know.
Yes. So, the idea of the ultimate universe. Well, I'm not. There's like what it is in the story, which is like this different universe that was created by Darkseid, and like they basically say like it's so convoluted. Basically, like the main universe is a universe of hope, and Superman embodies hope, but then Darkseid makes this other universe, which I think they call the Omega universe, because the real universe is the Alpha universe, and the Omega universe is born from or of or created by Darkseid, who's like
Right.
the ruler of Apocalypse. So it's like an inherently more evil universe. It's a darker universe. It's actually, you know what? Let me. I have notes. Dark Seed, Dark Side. Sorry, no, I would say Dark Seed.
It's okay.
Well, there's a joke about that in Harley Quinn, where someone's like Dark Seed, Dark Side. I don't know which one it is.
Right.
It's described as he describes it in the first comic as a world driven by challenge and turmoil, a world where heroes are born facing greater odds. Instead of being raised on paradise, they are raised in hell, where all advantages are gone, where they are the small chaos rather than the system itself. A world where hope is the underdog, where the villain is the opposing force, and where it will have to burn brighter than ever to survive it all.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
the idea of the Ultimate Universe.
of the absolute
I'm
universe.
sorry, Absolute Universe.
Yeah. And it works. It works. But what's really, really interesting about this stuff, and this is what I think we can kind of start unpacking, is that it seems like they also want to try to like rectify things that are in the character's origins, like they're in the
Yes.
character's DNA that have been around since the 30s,
Yeah.
right? I, I think there's been a shift. I've definitely noticed a shift within the last 10 years to where the characters that are rich, the billionaire characters like Bruce Wayne and like Tony Stark, they've figured out ways to like make them still be the heroes,
Yeah.
but not be billionaires. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's funny. Darkseid says that these heroes will have less advantages, but it makes me like them more actually
yeah,
because at least in the case, and we'll get into Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, which were the first three to come out and are widely successful, we should say. Like they've
yep,
had multiple reprints. This is actually going really well. And now they just started a absolute Martian Manhunter and an absolute Flash, which I have
yep.
not read yet. I think you read Flash, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I have DC Infinite, which is like an app where you can read their comics, and you basically get comics up until a month um after they're published, right?
Oh, okay.
So I think I might be an issue or two behind with like Superman and Batman with you, but I have like Absolute Flash, and I've read like I think the first five Wonder Womans, and I think either the first five or six Batmans and Supermans.
Okay. So yeah, those are
Yeah,
basically the first arcs. Um,
yeah.
but I mean, look, the easy way to say is these are reboots or remixes of the classic superheroes. So it's Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in their own lines, but done in different ways.
Mhm.
And some ways more dark, some ways more. I'm gonna like tip my hand a little bit and say like more liberal, which I like. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were just beginning to talk about this. This Batman, this Bruce Wayne does not come from a rich family,
No,
which I think makes him more likable in my eyes.
right.
And this Superman, this Kal-El, instead of his parents on Krypton being like very important dignitaries or very important scientists, they're like basically farmers and like nobody's on Krypton.
Yeah.
They, their apocalypse, not apocalypse, sorry. Darkseid says they've got less advantages, but it makes them more likable in a way.
Yes, yes. And Wonder Woman as well, where Wonder Woman's not raised on Themyscira, Paradise Island. She is raised in hell,
Which
and
is very cool.
she's raised by Cersei, who is one of Wonder Woman's enemies, but here she's like a surrogate mother who
Yeah,
raises her.
yeah,
Yeah. Um it, it, I mean, really, we kind of have to go book by book, and we have to kind of talk about the people that have made the books too,
sure.
because that's where it's interesting. Like, you sent me a picture of Superman's mom, and you're like, oh man, like this went really hard or something like that. Like, because she's holding like a lava gun, and she has this like
Yeah,
crazy
and she's
pose.
got her hip cocked and she's looking very sexy, I'll say it. And she's like,
Yeah,
"Let's go save your dad." And I was like, "Geez, wow."
yeah, yeah. She kind of looks like Ripley or something holding a gun,
Yeah,
and
because it's a huge gun. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not what you expect for Superman's mom, right? And
No,
it's funny that you sent that to me because I wanted to tell you that they originally wanted to title the Batman one and maybe all of them Batman AF, like as it's Batman as fuck, right?
okay,
So I think that that's kind of the vibe they're going for. It's like, oh, it's Batman to the extreme, right? It's Superman to the extreme,
that
and
makes sense.
I think that that's what all of these are, but it's so much deeper than that. It's not this sort of like 90s extreme bullshit. It's
Yeah,
like,
it is deeper than that. It's not just a gothy version of Wonder Woman. Like it takes the or the you might be used to this if you've like watched any kind of what if, Marvel what if. Like it takes the elements that are there and reconfigures them in interesting ways. It's funny by you saying because I was gonna say I don't know why it's called absolute because
right.
absolute tends to mean like definitive and these are different versions, but
Mhm.
you telling me that they wanted to call it fucking Batman as fuck makes me think like in this case, what they mean by absolute is like it's the most core of it, like the most core version of them.
Yep, yep. That's exactly it. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at, right? Because like let's talk about Batman,
Yeah, let's start with Batman.
Absolute Batman. Okay, so Absolute Batman, um, that's the first one that comes out, and it's a gigantic, gigantic success, right? Like it sells over 300,000 copies, which like for modern day comics, like modern day Marvel or DC, that is a tremendous hit
Yeah,
for three. I mean, when we were kids and there was the comic book boom, like comics would sell like 1 million copies per
yeah,
issue. But we're in a different time now. Um, the guy that wrote it is Scott Snyder. Now, Scott Snyder has written Batman for like a really long time, but in the regular DC universe, and his run on Batman, that's my favorite run of Batman.
okay.
He loves Batman. Like he like sleeps and eats and breathes Batman. Like,
Uh-huh.
he thinks about Bruce all the time. And I think that he probably was wrestling with like, what if Bruce wasn't a millionaire? What if his parents weren't killed? And that's a thing, or not that his parents weren't killed, but one of them
Yeah,
survived.
the mother is alive. Yeah.
And that's a common thread with these three main books is that the parentage
It's
is like
different.
completely different.
Yes, yes, that's absolutely right. Right, right. Not to jump ahead, but in Superman, I was really surprised that it doesn't happen as a child. Like he grows up on Krypton and he's like kind of like 13 or something when he comes to Earth.
Yep.
Which means instead of him being basically just like everything he gets from America and Kansas. Like he understands Krypton and like Kryptonian heritage and like his values come from his actual his bi not I should say actual, but his biological parents.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting stuff to me because like not only do the main characters get affected, but then the supporting characters are also affected. Like Lois Lane is totally different in this too. We'll
Yeah,
talk about her in a second. But what's interesting about Clark, and Lois starts to show this in the comic as well, but like he lives on Krypton, and Krypton is this like super advanced society where everything is like, I wouldn't even say digital, but like, you know, the futuristic technology. And like they show him in school and
yeah.
he's kind of an outcast in school because he likes to write.
He doesn't want to
Which,
use AI.
right, right. And I think that that in itself is so intriguing because they've essentially taken the Superman elements, but they sort of like switched places where they go, right?
Yeah,
Like he's raised by farmers, but he's raised by farmers on Krypton. So it's like,
yeah,
oh, that's different. And like he loves writing because they're making sure they're like, yeah, Clark likes to write. There's a reason why he's a reporter, you know? And they show that even though it's like on Krypton, he's writing.
yeah. And they mirror it by when you see Lois, on Earth. She's an agent. She's like an agent of Lazarus, so she's like this soldier of fortune, and she is likes to write her own reports.
Right.
And there's even like connections between like his Earth parents and his like you they're both kind of farmers, and you see both of his mothers working on a tractor or whatever, or in one case it's a spaceship. So there's interesting reflections of things you've seen before.
Right. And this goes back to is our episode on movies that blow your mind, or is that going to come out before this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean if people listen to that one, like this is that kind of thing where they challenge you. They're like, you always expect this from Superman, you always expect this from Batman. We're going to change it. And what's very, very interesting is the stuff that always stays and then the stuff that changes. So like Clark wanting to write, that's staying. Clark, being raised on a farm, that's staying. You know,
Yeah.
um, and then what's really interesting, I mean, we're kind of jumping all over the place, but like Bruce, I think more than any other comic book character, like he's defined by the death of his parents.
Right.
And so in this, we just have the father die. So like, I don't know if I've ever seen a fucking version of Batman where like just the mom's alive.
Yeah. And the mom is an interesting character too. Yeah, I'm sorry. I brought up Superman, but I do want to focus on Batman first.
Sure.
So it's in Gotham. This Bruce Wayne, his father is a teacher and his mother is a social worker. Um, he wins a science like contest as a kid where he comes up with the idea of like a bridge that could just a light bridge that could just be dropped from the sky so you could get like aid to people who need it. And he bases the design of the bridge on a bat or on a bat's wings. What they win is a trip to the zoo, and then there's like basically like a mass shooting at the zoo. A bunch of people died, including his father.
Right.
And the father, they're near like the bat house at the zoo, and the father's like pushes all the kids into it. It's like, oh, he sort of sacrifices himself to save all the kids, and while he's in there, the bats sort of like come down on him and scare him. So again, it's like these are the reconfigured elements of like how these things are like why he decides to call himself Batman.
Yep.
And he's they don't really say how he gets the money to do the shit he does, but he's an engineer. And they do something really interesting. Again, I felt this was like very like almost like Marxist in a way. Like this Batman, he was an athlete in school, and that's how he got a scholarship, but then he faked an injury so he didn't have to play anymore. But then like he goes and he works in construction, he goes and he works in all these infrastructure jobs. Like he goes and he works in sanitation. He goes and he interns in the mayor's office. So like he actually does the legwork to get a real understanding of the infrastructure of the whole city.
Right.
And instead of having a bat cave like real bats, which I learned from this comic book, he has little safe houses everywhere that he puts all over the city, which is like something that bats do. And Alfred in this, who's like an assassin, calls them like his little bat caves. So it's so
Yeah.
interesting, like the way like the idea of a bat and why would he call himself Batman? Like it means something different in this, but it's still somehow essential. Like you don't read these characters and feel like, well, this doesn't feel like Batman. This is a different Batman, or this doesn't feel like Wonder Woman. Somehow they feel like who they are, even with the different origins and changes.
Exactly. Exactly. And like at their core, they're the same character, but the aesthetics and everything is different. And it's really, really interesting, right? Because if you think about Batman's original origin, the significance of a bat is, at least like if you look at Batman Begins, which kind of mirrors a lot of the comic book stories, he falls into a cave that has a bunch of bats in it. Now, he falls into a cave that's on his property of his mansion, his huge property. That's where he falls into a cave. Now,
Right.
this Batman is not born out of wealth, so he doesn't have like a bat cave on his property. He just starts to become obsessed with bats because of this school project, which
Yeah.
involves, hey, incorporate an animal into this design for this like structure you're going to make, right? And so everything is kind of explained from the ground up, where it's like, well, that's where he starts to get into bats, and then they go to the zoo because of this bat exhibit. And then what's interesting too is that Joe Chill is still the guy that kills his
Yeah.
dad, but it's not like he's robbing this rich couple that's coming out of a theater.
Yeah.
He's a shooter. He's a fucking crazy shooter at
Yeah.
a zoo.
Yeah. And I kind of want to get into just there were like the cool comic booky things that are different that I kind of want to get into. Like, so this Batman, his batarangs are his ears. So like the ears on his cowl, he'll pull at the ears and they'll come off,
Yeah.
and those are the batarangs, and he throws them and brings them back.
Right.
That's fucking awesome. He also
Yeah.
has, it makes no sense, but he has this way of like his cape will like porcupine and like spikes come out of it. So like multiple times people will like jump on him and then he'll make that happen and they'll get impaled.
Right.
Again, so fucking cool. His
Yes.
bat symbol, like he's got the bat symbol on his chest, but it's very like broad and like boxy. And then at one point he takes out what looks like, it doesn't look like anything. It just looks, it's like a handle. But then he puts it on the symbol and you see the symbol comes off his chest and it's an axe. And he
Yep.
uses to fucking chop people up. And it's
Yeah.
so fucking dope. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
It is. It is. It's Batman AF, right? Like it's
Batman is
so.
fuck.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you hear guitar riff, like
Right. Right. It's absolutely metal. Absolutely.
yeah,
I think one of my favorite things I've seen in the comic in years is in the very first issue. They have a guy in a gym, like a boxing gym, and he starts hitting the bag and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And he looks like Bruce Wayne, the guy. Like you kind of see him in shadow, and it looks like Bruce Wayne. You're like, oh, Bruce is training, right? But then this massive Goliath of a man comes into the gym, and he's like, oh, I need to train now. And so the other guy leaves, and then you see that this is Bruce
Yeah,
Wayne,
yeah.
giant, and,
Oh,
and
he's
so
huge. In a lot of ways he reminds me of Frank Miller's Batman because he's like a square. He has huge arms. He is a little bit of Pattinson from the new Batman movie because he it looks like he's wearing eyeliner and he has long stringy hair and he's young. He's only supposed to be 24 in this. But he's
right.
gigantic. He's so huge.
Right. Yeah, that was the marketing. And this kind of came out of nowhere. Like I know that they had announced this and they started to show the artwork. The art is by Nick Dragata. He is
Yeah,
the one who
very
does
cool
the
stuff.
interior work. Yeah, and so like when you see the artwork, you just see this gigantic Batman and you see this bat symbol that's not like elegant at all. It's
Yeah,
just kind of like a brick for a bat symbol. And you're like, this is different. What is up with this?
yeah,
And immediately before the comic even came out, people were doing their own kind of artwork of that version of Batman, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So it had the hype in it. And the book lives up to the hype. Like I think going back to what you were saying before, this Bruce is like of the people, like he's of the city of Gotham. He knows like
yeah,
every part of Gotham, and then like he's just like practical and on a mission, which the regular Bruce is like that
yeah.
too. The regular Bruce has places all over Gotham. He's obsessed with Gotham, but this is a Bruce that had to do it without any kind of money. I mean, his father was a fucking teacher for God's sake. You know, you can't
Right,
get
right,
much
right,
more than
right. And
that.
this Bruce is his close friends from his childhood to adulthood are the villains. His
Yep.
best friends growing up are who will be Croc, Selena Kyle,
Harvey
Edward
Dent.
Nigma, the Riddler, Harvey Dent, and Penguin.
Yeah.
None of them are their villainous person yet, but it's those characters. Actually, that reminded me a little bit of the show Gotham. The idea of
Yeah.
young Bruce and young Selena having a childhood friendship.
Yeah.
But it's cool because they're not though they feel true to their characters too. They're not like good guy versions, but they're also like they're not that thing yet. There's some in the first arc, there's some hinting that there's a Joker and that the Joker's rich, which is an interesting inversion. But
Yeah.
the main villains that we've seen so far are this group of terrorists called the Party Animals. They have basically video gamified crime.
Yep.
Like at first you think like these are just these terrorists that all they want to do is create horror, create violence. But then you realize what they are they have these skulls that look like these masks that look like skulls, but
Right.
inside they have these visors that like have a readout, like a computer interface, and it'll say like stab this guy $100,
Yeah.
rob this bank $4,000. So
Right.
they gamified crime, and that's why it seems so random and insane. But
Yeah.
even that, like the villain, the head of the bad guys, is a guy named Roman. He does this whole like Marxist screed where he's like fucking we are stuck pulling our recycling bins to the corner while the rich fly around on jets that destroy the environment. Why don't we get a chance? And it's basically like go ahead and fucking you'll like the Joker, whoever is behind it, will make you rich the more crime you create, the more crime. So it gamifies it. So it's such an interesting villain or villainous group because they're a gang, which we've seen in Batman before. They wear masks, which we've seen in Batman before. But they're trying to get rich.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
it's dealing with the thing that Batman, I feel like, until recently didn't directly deal with, which is fucking that he's rich. And
Yes.
like I've been watching a lot of Harley Quinn, and I'm going to be doing a Harley Quinn episode soon. And there's a funny bit where did you ever watch that show?
No.
There's a funny bit where she goes into Bruce's memory and he's like talking about how he has to become Batman. And she's like, you could also like, I don't know, open affordable housing.
Yeah.
Like, which is a joke people say about Batman. Like, why be Batman if you're like, go ahead and fucking like make affordable housing, open a
Yeah.
factory. But this Batman, like, it circumvents that critique because he is just a normal dude.
Yes. Right, right. It is one of those like retroactive things where they're like changing a fundamental thing about Batman and they're making it more applicable because I think that as we keep going into this dark future that we live in, there's that more and more resentment towards billionaires. And I think that
Yes.
billionaires or millionaires, I think at the time, like when these characters first showed up, you know, they that was just an explanation for why they would have so many things, like why they would have a Batmobile and all these weapons and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so they've kind of like retroactively changed that. I wanted to talk about Black Mask for a second though, because it's
Yeah.
really interesting to me. So Black Mask is not as big a Batman villain as the obvious ones like
Yeah.
Penguin, Joker, right, Riddler. But he's still a pretty big character in the comics. He was in the Harley Quinn movie with
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right, and Ewan McGregor played him, right?
Yeah.
In this, it's funny because Scott Snyder leans towards horror. He's written certainly a lot of horror comics. There's always horror elements in his stories. And I feel like the Black Mask stuff, especially in the first issue, they go like real hard with that. He has like
Yeah.
a little toddler, and the toddler I think has two knives and just shoves them into
Yeah.
either Falcone or Maroni's eyes at one
Yeah. Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And there's like it's weird because like Black Mask has this weird mask on his face. It makes him look almost like a creature. And then there's a guy that has like tentacles, almost like he's like a Twilight from Star Wars
Yeah.
that works for him. So
And a
there's
little
all this.
baby one.
Right, right, exactly. And it's just strange and bizarre, but they're like a true threat. Like you think
Yeah.
about how dangerous they are, and they're pretty scary for the first villains in the first arc.
Yeah. So I'm not that familiar with Black Mask. In the like regular comic, does
Yeah,
he have a gang like this? Like the party
yeah.
animal?
Everyone's got gangs, right? Joker, Penguin, all of them,
Oh
including
yeah.
Black Mask, right? And Black Mask, I think it's not even the original guy anymore. I think the original guy is dead, but he's just basically like a gangster that has a mask. Like he's not as deep as like Mr. Freeze or Two
Okay.
Face. Yeah,
Interesting. Interesting. What do you think this version also has Gordon is the mayor and he's running for re-election and Batman's mother is like works on his campaign and Harvey what no is Bullock is the commissioner.
Commissioner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so this brings up like stuff that's kind of controversial, not kind of controversial, but like they've definitely gone with the idea of Catwoman is black, uh, Gordon is black, right? And I know
Yeah.
like certain comic book fans are gonna be like, oh my God, DEI or whatever the fuck, right? But they've incorporated that to where Gordon is a black man, Barbara, his daughter, is at least half black or whatever. Same
Right.
with Kyle, things like that. And it's a Gordon that's been around to where he is the mayor and stuff like that now. And all these little changes, they don't bother me at all. It just makes sense for modern day, right? To
Right.
have the Batman cast have so many characters and to have them all be white, it just doesn't make sense at this point, in
Right.
this modern day. Like, it is good to diversify the supporting cast some more.
Right.
Like, this world is like obviously like very thought out. Like it's thought
Yeah.
out like where the roles of each character, how this is all going to build up. I mean, it's very intriguing. Would you say that this is the most interesting one out of the three for you?
Gosh, that's such a good question. Probably it's the most interesting story, whereas I think Wonder Woman is my favorite art. I really,
Oh
especially
yeah,
because Wonder Woman deals with magic, so it's
yeah,
like cool magic. She's like a beast master who like hangs out with like like hell beasts.
yes,
Um, and Superman's just great because I love Superman, and it's doing a lot of the things. We can move to Superman now. It's doing a
sure,
lot of things that I want. I always think about with Superman, which is like this Superman when we meet him, he's not just in Metropolis protecting a major city. He actually goes all around the world to third world places and places where there's, human suffering and helps them. So
right,
he travels to places and helps people that are subjugated,
right.
which is, I
Yeah,
think, a cool idea.
yeah. I think the most recent issue I read, because I didn't finish the first Superman arc. I did finish The Zoo by Batman. That's the first arc. But in the first one, the where I left off, like he was really upset with this one Peacemaker, who's the Peacemaker that John Cena plays in
Yes.
the, and he ends up going to Smallville at the very end of the issue, and that's the last thing I read.
Yeah.
Is that where you're up to, or are you past
I'm
that?
I'm one. There's an epilogue which is just him on Smallville and like his Earth parents. But you basically got the whole story. But yeah, yeah. So you basically got an idea of who he is.
Yeah,
This. So we talked a little bit before. This Superman, he comes from a he was raised in the Badlands, or no, the Redlands, which is a part of Krypton outside of the city, which is like he's almost like Uncle Owen, like they're moisture farmers.
right,
There's like this red sand everywhere.
right.
Um, they are the elite of Krypton. Um, Krypton is like a caste system, which is something that they've had before. But typically, Superman, the family, the elves are not the lowest class, but in this they are. Even though his parents are very smart, they were taken out of the upper class because they challenged authority. So they returned into laborers. So his father's a miner. So they live on a farm and they have the farm and they farm there. But also his father's a miner who is a laborer who goes into the mines and mines like the material, the crystals and stuff. But he's very smart. But like it's a caste system, so he's treated like shit. And his mother is an engineer, so she like can work on like equipment and she builds his rocket ship in this version. But she also was cast out of the upper levels because she challenged the elders in some way.
Yeah,
Um, so they're like very low class. They live in like this farm, this desert. It's like a desert. They do have
right,
crypto. Like we see their Jor-El the father's in the mines, and they're like there's some instability, and he tells them, "All right, stop. We can't dig anymore." And then one of the upper crest people comes in and he's like, what are you doing? You can't what are you doing? You gotta keep working. And he's like, no, these mines are unstable. We need to test. And he's like, you're just a laborer. Who told you you can like make any decisions like this? And that's the beginning of like him realizing that Krypton is dying.
right,
Because they're like overmining it. They're
right.
basically like taking too much out of the planet. But an interesting inversion in this is whereas like in the traditional Superman story, the upper class people they just are in denial about what's happening. So they can't see beyond their own arrogance. In this, we find out that they also know that Krypton's dying, but they just are keeping it from the people, and they're creating like these big ships to get all the rich people off the planet before it dies, which I think is such an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah. What's interesting about this book to begin with is that it's not Krypton is all a memory, and that Clark is learning about Krypton
Yes.
like through crystals and stuff like that. Like he's not learning about it through recordings, he's learning about it through experience. And
Yeah.
he's recounting what happened to Krypton in its final
Right.
days. Um, and I think that like just the idea of Batman not being rich or like it being bad that Bruce Wayne is a billionaire. I think another thing they're trying to like retroactively address is like, wouldn't Superman's parents want to try to escape with him? Wouldn't they try to, take other people with them? So
Right.
that's a big
Yes.
part of this first arc is like them trying to save multiple people, right?
Right. Right. They basically create like an arc where like
Mhm.
they're trying to get dozens of the workers to come with them.
Right, right. And one thing I kind of wanted to address now, because I don't want to forget it, is when you have this kind of stuff like this absolute universe or like the ultimate universe or these cinematic universes where
Yeah.
they're all kind of set in the modern day, one thing they start to do is they start to like tie everything together the way that things are tied after like decades of continuity.
Right.
Whereas, like when they would introduce like different elements, they'd be like random elements. Like this is Supergirl and she's from Kandor, and this is Brainiac. But everything in these stories now starts to become tied together,
Yeah.
right? And you might have an allusion towards Supergirl in their escape from Krypton scene because
Yes, yeah,
spoilers, they do have this arc, and the parents go to leave Krypton, and it's a super tragic, upsetting scene. But essentially, like everyone that's on the ship, including Kal-El and his parents, they're all bonded to the ship itself, and then the
right.
ship gets hit with pieces of Krypton, and then like each person becomes like their own individual ship. It's really
Right. It's
weird.
yeah, the ship and his suit are the same
Right,
thing that has a consciousness called Sol. SOL.
right. Right. And that in itself is something we need to talk about too. But
Oh
the
yeah.
way that they end this arc is that like the ship that everyone's on gets destroyed. And so the implication, the way it's shown in the panels, it makes it look like everybody else is dead and just Clark is alive. But
Yeah.
the way comics are, they're gonna make it like, oh well, his cousin
Right,
survived.
well,
And
he talks to a little girl at one point.
right,
Right.
right,
I forget what she says, but he talks to a little girl. So I mean, you get the idea like that's probably Supergirl.
right. It's Kara, right, exactly. But we definitely need to talk about that suit for a
Oh
second
my
because
God. I I don't know
good.
if I like what I like better, Batman's or this. This,
Yeah,
it's like a
I
black suit
yeah,
and it's constantly morphing. It's got a consciousness. It is the ship as well. It's crazy. It's like it's black and it looks like kind of like stripy and stuff. And it can change and move and morph and change based on and its prime objective, the AI in it, to protect the last Kryptonian. So it's always trying to protect Superman, and he's always talking to it. Like people think
right,
he's crazy, like he's talking to himself, but he's like talking to it, like telling it to do things. And then, but the very cool thing is, so like there's where they lived in Krypton is the Redlands with all this sand. So that's like a big motif. That's a big part of his life. The suit uses that sand to build things and make things, but it's
yeah,
also visually it's his cape. So he
right,
doesn't have a cape, but when he needs to, like the red sand will come out and it'll come around him and it'll come off his shoulders and it looks like his cape, but he can also wrap people around, wrap with it and it could get huge. But when he doesn't have it, he has no cape. He's just this black suit. It's so cool. Such a cool way to reimagine the suit and how it works.
yep. Yeah, and it's funny because the first story arc is called "Last Dust of Krypton,"
Yeah,
which you said it's a big motif in this. No, I was going to say that like one of the problems is that you're dealing with characters that were created before World War II, right?
yeah,
So you're dealing with like origins and stuff that go back to the 1930s, and in the DNA of Superman, you have this sort of like elite Kryptonian society
yeah,
and they look a certain way, and their look has changed based on artists and based on the movies and stuff. Like all the Crystal stuff comes from like your Richard Donner movies and stuff, right?
yeah.
And so when you have a character that's from the 30s and now we're telling a story in 2024, 2025, it's like things wouldn't make as much sense.
Like, why would he have a cape? Like, where do capes even come from? Is that from like
Right.
acrobats or whatever? Like,
Exactly. And they try to always address it in like movies and stuff where they're like, well, that was the style.
yeah,
People would dress in capes and stuff. And then like another thing that's changed over time is like his symbol on his chest. It's like, well, that's the symbol of the House of El, and oh, it represents this river and it represents hope.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's always this kind of like retroactively they're trying to like modernize this stuff that's from the 1930s, right? And so his costume itself hasn't made sense in a modern context up until now
yeah,
because now his costume is now like it's this fucking alien technology. It morphs,
yeah.
it changes. Like that's much more believable than like he's wearing a sort of like wrestler costume that was the style of his people.
Right, right.
So
But it's interesting. I gotta say, like, if they did, it works as a comic and it works as this thought experiment that is the absolute universe. Like, if you did a Superman movie that was like this, I would probably like it, but I think part of me would also be like, wow, that's so different. You know what I
yep,
mean? Like you kind of have to be like, what we're doing here is something different.
yeah.
And allow it
So
to look different.
so I have a $1 million question for you then. If Wow, I just squeezed a rubber ducky in my wife's car. If there was if James Gunn used this universe as the basis for his DC universe, would you be happy or would you be disappointed?
That's a great question. If he really leaned into doing this and wasn't trying to do both, I think I'd be okay with it. I
Okay.
think I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'd be okay with it. I mean,
Yeah. It,
I don't mind. I like subversions of, I like different things. Like I don't like Snyder's version of the universe, not necessarily because it's different, but because I think a lot of the choices I just don't like.
right.
To me,
Right.
like an alien being alien is the obvious idea. An alien being kind is an interesting inversion of that. So him
Yeah.
going back and be like, "Well, I'm going to make Superman really alien." It's like, well, that's the less interesting idea. Like
Right.
it might not be what we were doing, but like, don't you see? Like that's less of a thought. I don't know. It's just in my view of it.
No, no, no. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think we've talked about this on your show, or at least on Comic Books Transform. But like, what Superman is he's the good person. I don't want to say he's like the red-blooded American, but he's like the ideal American, where
Yeah,
he's not racist. He's kind. He uses his gifts for good. That's Superman, and I think that like with Zack Snyder it was like we're gonna play up that he's a god and he's so exceptional, he's so different.
right, right,
But
right.
like this comic goes along with the new 52 version of Superman 2, where it kind of goes back to that very early Superman where he's like fighting gangsters and like corrupt landlords and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Oh, yes, exactly. Like the champion of the oppressed.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So you have the champion of the oppressed kind of thing, but with this sort of like alien aesthetic where it's like
yeah,
very foreign seeming. And then like another thing with Superman though too is that like they live on this planet where the sun's fucking red. There's crystals everywhere. Like you'd think that the Kryptonians wouldn't look just like regular humans,
yeah,
but that's something that, obviously you can't have everything, right?
yeah,
But like
yeah,
um but like I wanted to talk about the world that this Superman lives in too, because there's this big corporation called Lazarus, this big conglomerate that like controls like countries and stuff basically. And they have a peacekeeping force, peacemakers basically.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
the main
Oh, you
peacemaker that
didn't
we
read the last issue, right? You didn't read the last one.
no, no,
Oh,
no.
can I spoil something?
Go ahead, go nuts, yeah.
Um, and you probably know this because it's called Lazarus. It ends with Ra's al Ghul being the person behind the Lazarus Corporation.
Oh, that's cool.
So
That's
a
cool.
Batman, so which traditionally a Batman villain, right? And you see him come out of the Lazarus pit.
That's pretty fucking awesome. I mean, see, I'm glad that you brought that up because this stuff kind of reminds me of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, which Ra's al Ghul and all that League of
Yeah,
Shadows
yeah,
shit is a big part of those movies, right? Because like Batman Begins does this thing where it like explains why everything that's in the lore is there. Like he's a bat motif because of this, and like his suit is like this because of this, and he has this kind of grappling hook like it's all explained. And that's what these comics are like too. They're kind of like, this is why we have this in the lore, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're running a little bit out of time, so let's just a little bit about Wonder Woman, and then I want to ask you about how you think these worlds might come together.
Ah,
Um,
yes, juicy
So
question. Go ahead.
Wonder Woman, very cool design, a lot of red. Actually, there's a lot of red in all of this.
Yeah,
She does look kind of like a gothy version of Wonder Woman, but she's also very stout. She has a big, strong nose, which I like. She doesn't have petite little Western standard of beauty marks. She looks like she's big and tall. Like she looks like a wrestler. Um
yeah,
she's taken Apollo takes her from Themyscira and gives her to Cersei in hell, and she's raised in hell, which is
yeah,
immediately beautiful looking. And the artist of Wonder Woman is Hayden Sherman, and the colors by Jordi Belair. And there's a very like Morbius kind of not Morbius the comic book, but Morbius the artist
Isn't
look
it, isn't it
like
Mobius?
Mobius,
Yeah, yeah.
the French artist.
Right.
Like there's thin very thin lines and a lot of great detail, like beautiful artwork of hell.
Yes. The book looks beautiful. And I mean, all of these books look beautiful. And what's great is that the art style is very different for all three of them.
Yes.
right? They're all very synced up with the type of story and the aesthetic of each story, right?
Yeah.
And they're all very different. Superman's got this like sci-fi cutting edge kind of look to it. Batman's got this kind of gritty dark city version, and
Yeah.
then Wonder Woman is this sort of like, mythological over the top extreme thing, and I fucking love it. I mean, she doesn't
Yeah.
fight like Cheetah or Ares or anybody in this. She fights like a gigantic kaiju monster for
Yes.
the first story arc, and the way she fights it, it's not like she just flies up and punches it and then like gets knocked down and says, "Oh, I gotta punch it again." There's not like
Yeah.
she keeps doing these creative things. And then besides that, what the creature does itself is really involved and interesting too. Like the creature attacks like the city, which is Gateway City. It's
Yeah.
just another random made up city in the DC universe. And like it has this thing where it's gonna emit this noise that's gonna make everyone want to kill themselves.
Right. Or
Right.
walk into his mouth.
Right, right,
They're
right,
attracted to it. Yeah, like a Pied Piper.
right. And like to kind of take on this dynamic, like you need a different kind of artist. Like there's one of the cool things about modern comics is that they're not afraid to use different styles and do
Yeah.
things besides the sort of the standard that we've had for so long. And the art is fucking beautiful. I also want to point out that the writer is fantastic too, Kelly Thompson. So
Yeah.
for all of these books, they got really big name talents. Scott Snyder on Batman, Jason Aaron on Superman, and then Kelly Thompson on this book. And I've loved Kelly Thompson. She has done a lot of great stuff for Marvel. Like she wrote the Hawkeye book where it's like the other Hawkeye, Kate Bishop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She's written for Captain Marvel. Have you seen like Jeff the Land Shark at all in any of your scrolling through comic book things?
No, I have no, I haven't.
Like there's a character called Jeff the Land Shark that she created, which is like a shark, and that's kind of like a big thing at Marvel right now. And
Okay.
she created it, right? She also wrote the Birds of Prey comic that came out recently, and it's really fucking good, and the artwork in that is fantastic. So
Oh,
Kelly Thompson is a pretty big name now too.
that's awesome. Oh, yeah. The writing is great on all of this. I mean, what a
Yeah,
fun experiment, like to be told, like, take one of these major superheroes and like give me your version of it. Like,
yeah,
what? That's such a fun thought experiment.
right, right, and like distill them to their most basic points. You have to make sure you hit those basic points, but then give new exciting ways to explain the lore. I mean, in this story, Wonder Woman doesn't even have a fucking arm. Like she gave up her arm
Yeah.
to save Steve Trevor, and
Yeah.
then she has this sort of like magical arm
Yeah.
in
She
its
flies
place.
around on a Pegasus, like a skeleton Pegasus.
Yes.
Fucking
And it
awesome.
and it the Pegasus too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes but they make a joke of like it's a Pegasus because in modern culture they make it like it's a type of
Right,
species.
right. Steve says like you named your Pegasus Pegasus, and she's like, it is Pegasus.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I I think the key thing, what's the most interesting thing though about this is that her mother is Cersei, and like Cersei reluctantly has to watch her, and then she raises her, and I think that that's really special compared to all the rest of these books because you have like a villain that becomes a loving mother, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It is. It's fascinating, and she's reluctant at first.
Yeah,
Like she doesn't
yeah,
want it, but then as she raise, she says like raising a child will make you fall in love with it.
right. And I think what's beautiful about these three books, if it's Batman AF, right, and Clark, it's like the main component of them, each of them has. Like Bruce is like resourceful and will just do anything for his mission, and that's
Yeah.
Batman, right?
Yeah.
Clark is like, I have this power, I have to help the oppressed. That's Clark,
Yeah.
right? Diana like inspires people and makes people want to be better. So
Yeah.
she makes Cersei want to be better. She makes every human she interacts with want to be better. They even kind of comment on that in like the second to last issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, well, there's two things. The absolute universe is also part of this other thing that DC is doing called All In, which is involving the regular DC universe. How do you see this all coming together? Like, obviously these absolute comics are really popular. Do you see them all intersecting as something at a point? Or do you see them intersecting with the real universe again? Or do you think because they're so popular, they just might run for a long time and just go?
Like ideally, the best case scenario, which is going to be counter to like what they're going to do, is that they should. There's a guy blowing like leaves right on my car, right blowing. Like I think he sees me. I don't know why he's gonna blow leaves right on my car. Anyway, the DC universe they've built it in to where they can have crossovers, right?
Yeah.
Because with the creation of the Absolute Universe, they made it like, oh, this literally came from the DC universe.
Yeah.
Like Darkseid like merges with the Spectre, and then he like creates this Absolute Universe. Also, in that All In special, they have this thing where Booster Gold
Yeah.
travels to the Absolute Universe. And I think he's stuck there. So
Yeah.
like you're already kind of building in these crossroads, right? But like what they really should do, if they learn from the Ultimate Universe, is they should really just focus on these individual books and their own arcs and not have them all cross over right away too.
But they're not going to do that, you don't think?
They're not going to do that. Like within a year, they're going to have probably like the Absolute Justice League, and it's going to have all these characters on it, and then
Yeah.
they'll meet their DC universe counterparts. It'll happen.
So one of the criticisms, I want to know your opinion on this. One of the big criticisms of DC Comics is that they are always doing these gigantic things, whether
Hmm.
it be New 52 or even going back to like even all the different crises on Infinite Earth, and then Identity Crisis, and like they're constantly doing these giant things. I mean, why do you think they do them? Do you think that they've had any success with them? You were just talking about how New 52 kind of didn't work.
Yeah. Um, I know why they do them. It's because they've been around since the 1930s. So pretty soon DC Comics is going to be around for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
And there's always been this fear, and I think it's an unreasonable fear that people get intimidated by all the continuity and they say, "Oh, I can't read there's too much to it," right?
Right.
But like I came into comics in the late 80s, early 90s. So like Superman and Batman have been around for like almost 60 years.
Yeah,
And I was able to get into it. You just need your thing that's like the basic version. Like you just need to see the Batman movie, and then you just need to see the cartoon, and then you're like, okay, I get this.
right.
And then you can wade into these waters. And the beauty of comics is they're like, okay, I don't know anything about this character. Okay, I'll read this book by them. It requires some effort. It requires some passion for it, excitement
Right.
about it.
But
And
nothing gets new readers than more than good stories,
right.
which is what they
And
should.
go ahead, I'm sorry. No. Say your thing. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's wrong. I think they're wrong. Like, I think having a good story will get you in. Having, to me, like, I understand they want to reset things,
Yeah.
but when they reset it though, they still make it gigantic. Like the New 52, it's like, oh, I have to read all of them. So
Yeah.
the idea that it's making it easier for people to jump on, it may be giving them a jumping on point, but it's not making it easier.
No, and that's one of the things that the Absolute Universe is superior to the New 52 on is that when they made the New 52, in some books they made it like they were starting from scratch. Like Superman was like, "Oh, this is the first time he's meeting this person. This is the first time he's meeting this person." But then they loved Scott Snyder's stuff pre New 52. So like all of his Batman stuff just kind of continued as if it was almost like from the old universe, you know? So you had some stuff that was like the
Yeah.
old universe, some stuff that was like the new 52, and that even though they're trying to start from scratch, it made things like way more complicated than they needed to, you
Yeah.
know? At least with the Absolute Universe, it's kind of like this is brand new. Like you don't have to have read anything else prior to this to get this.
Yes. Right. And you didn't need to even read the one shot about how the universe was created. You could just pick up any of these and you get what it is.
Yes, exactly. And they're a lot of fun. I mean, I did read the first Flash issue. I really enjoyed it. The Martian Manhunter one's not available yet on DC Infinite, but they've got like really big names on each of these books. I'm trying to remember who the hell wrote the Flash book, but I know that like Jeff Lemire wrote the Martian Manhunter one, so that's going to be real good.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, but can you just tell us one thing about the Flash book? Anything that stands out to you as an interesting change?
Sure. So, like in the 90s, the Flash was Wally West, who was originally Kid Flash, but Barry Allen died,
Uh-huh.
right? And so Wally was the Flash, like when I was in the comics, when I first got into it, right? A lot of people from like my generation, our generation, that's who they see as the Flash. So Wally in the Absolute universe is the Flash and not Barry. And they made it to where Barry and Wally's dad are working on a military base, and they're working on some kind of project. And like that's what leads to Wally becoming the Flash.
Okay.
And he's not wearing a costume or anything at first. It's just like, and I think he's kind of like displaced from time. He kind of like jumps around in time,
Okay, that's
and
smart.
that's a big. Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's an interesting take. It's like it's Wally as the Flash versus Barry, and he's not like Barry is like a police forensics guy, right? When he
Yeah.
becomes the Flash, it's nothing like that. He's just the son of a guy on a military base, and so I don't know where it's going, but it's already different from the regular Flash.
Cool. Yeah, and I would say to the audience, like, if you've never read comics or whatever, you know these characters like Batman and Superman. It's absolutely worth taking a look at this stuff because I'm a comic fan, but but like compared to Peter, I'm really not. Like, there's so much to keep up with. I kind of like cherry pick things that I want, but I had heard about this and I was like, oh, let me try it, and I'm so delighted by how interesting this stuff is. So I really think if it sounds interesting to you, we've only just talked about the first like 5 issues of these things. Like so they're gonna go in really interesting ways. So I would say give it a shot, look at it.
Yeah, man. I mean, you can get them online. You can go to the comic book store. I mean, especially if you go to the comic book store, they'll greatly appreciate you. And if you live
Yeah.
on Staten Island, like there's some good comic book stores there too. That's the beauty of these things is that you really could just start with issue one and you don't have to worry about having read anything else.
Yeah, yeah. So Peter, tell us about your channels.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay. So, guys, I mean, if you made it all through this episode, then you must like comics on some level. Me and my friend Brian, we have a comic channel called Comic Books Transformed, where we discuss movies and streaming shows that are adapted from comics. Right now, we're covering The Last of Us, which just came back. That's actually not based on a comic, but Brian really loves video games. I think there is a Last of Us comic now, but um, it's really good. We're covering that. We just finished covering Daredevil Born Again. That was good. Andor is coming out in like a week or two, and we are super excited to talk about Andor.
Yeah.
On the Lasser cast, Danny and I have done a couple of David Lynch films recently. We're doing this thing called Beyond Horror, where we're not just talking about horror movies. We actually covered some like Indian movies recently and
Nice.
really enjoyed those. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what show. We just finished Yellow Jackets season 3, and there's always stuff. I mean, Danny's constantly reviewing whatever's in the theater, like
Yeah,
horror
yeah,
movies.
yeah, yeah. Very cool.
Yeah,
Peter,
man.
thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for letting us talk about this. This is kind of my bread and butter, so I appreciate it. Yeah, man.
We end every episode by saying
Go bye bye.